Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Lexa Peterson, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Corporal Kieran Bobbitt. We warmly welcome the family of Private Francis Herbert Nield, whose story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome one RTU course delegation from the Royal Australian Air Force Base, Wagga Wagga. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Francis Herbert Nield. Francis Nield was born around October 1887 in the Western Victorian town of Macarthur. Known as Frank, he was one of 6 children born to Henry and Maggie Nield. The Nield family remained in Macarthur throughout Frank's childhood and teenage years. He attended the Macarthur State School before finding work as a labourer in and around the town. Frank was an active sportsman and was the captain of the local Macarthur football team. Frank Nield enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 9th of August 1915. In October, he was transferred to reinforcements for the 6th Battalion. In early November, he was granted a period of pre-embarkation leave to visit family and friends back in Macarthur. A large farewell was held at the local mechanics hall, where Frank was gifted a pair of military brushes and a pocketbook. 200 people turned out for the farewell supper, and guest speakers praised Frank's popularity within the community. Private Frank Nield departed Melbourne in the troopship Ceramic on the 23rd of November 1915, bound for Egypt. In Egypt, Nield was taken on strength of the 6th Battalion. After a month in camp, he left Alexandria for France and the Western Front. His battalion was almost immediately thrust into the realities of trench warfare on the Somme, moving into frontline trenches for the first time in late April. The battalion experienced its first battle on the Western Front in late July 1916, taking part in Allied fighting around the village of Pozières. During the battalion's withdrawal on the 25th of July, Nield sustained a gunshot wound to the back. He was admitted to the 1st Australian General Hospital 2 days later and spent a week undergoing treatment for his gunshot wound and shell shock. Nield was discharged from hospital on the 8th of August, and after spending 4 days at a convalescence camp, was transferred to the base depot at Havre to prepare to rejoin the fighting. Nield returned to the 6th Battalion on the 20th of September 1916, just in time for the battalion's move into the trenches outside Zillebeke in Belgium. A few hours after his arrival, the battalion attacked, facing strong German resistance and counterattack. At around noon, Nield was at the mouth of a tunnel when he was hit by German shrapnel in the groin. He had been back with his battalion for less than 24 hours. Although Nield was rushed to the nearby No. 2 Australian Field Ambulance by stretcher bearers, medical attention came too late. Frank Nield died from a hemorrhage as a result of wounds sustained in action on the 21st of September 1916. He was 29 years old. When news of his death reached Australia, commemorative notices flooded into the local newspapers. His family inserted a short commemorative notice in the Argus, which read, "Dearly loved, deeply mourned," while friends Addie and Lenore remembered him as a true comrade and brave soldier. Frank's remains were buried at Bedford House Cemetery in Ypres. After the war, an Imperial War Graves headstone was erected over his grave, bearing the personal inscription selected by his family back in Australia. Ever remembered by those you left at home. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one many of the stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Francis Herbert Nield, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post-ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.